That is called as method overloading. For same function name, you are going to provide multiple meanings. What is method overloading? You are going to assign multiple meanings for the same function. For suppose if I have add, I can add 2 variables or 3 variables. So what is the purpose of add? To add numbers. So if I write in this way, in C, your C compiler does not allows you. You have to write different function name for two different functions. Whereas in Java compiler will allows you to overload your methods. What do you mean by method overloading? If you are changing your parameters list, then your compiler will recognize those two functions as different functions. So based on the function call, your compiler will go and check the parameter list. What is the type of parameter list? And based on the parameter list, your compiler going to call respective function. For suppose if I call the function with 3 parameters list, that means 10, 20, 30, then this particular function will be called. For suppose if I call the function with only 2 variables like 5, 6, then this respective function will be called. What is method overloading? Defining 2 or more methods within the same class that shares the same name. So here what is the difference? The parameters declarations are different. For those methods, parameters are different. Remaining everything is same. Next, this is called method overloading. So how you can differentiate your parameters? Either by the type or number of parameters, and also order of parameters. In which order you are calling the parameters? Type means based on data type, what data type you are using. So based on the data type, you can differentiate two functions in the same way based on number of parameters. Here two functions is differentiated based on number of parameters. Okay, so you can also differentiate based on return type, but it is not that much convenient for your compiler. So basically compiler will maximum checks for type of arguments and number of arguments and order of your arguments. Let's see some example. So here you can able to see 3 different ways to overload a method. What are the 3 different ways? The first one is number of parameters. For suppose if here I have taken 2 add functions. So in these 2 add functions, the first add function takes 2 arguments, whereas the second function taking 3 arguments. So you can write in this way, or you can change the data type of parameters. For suppose if you are having same number of arguments but different data type, here int, here int float. So the second parameter list is, second parameter in the parameter list is different. So if you send in this order also, your compiler can differentiate 2 functions. And the third way is sequence of data type. So here also your compiler will consider these 2 functions as different, because here the first parameter is integer. Here the first parameter is float, which is purely different. For suppose if you are calling any function with first parameter as floating point, then it will call this function. You can write combination of all these things. Two parameters, three parameters, changing the data type, changing the sequence of data. You can write any number of methods by differentiating one method from another method by number of arguments or data type of parameters or sequence of data. This is called method overloading. What do you mean by method overloading, ma? What do you defining two or more methods with the same class name that shares same name as long as their parameter declarations are different, then the methods are said to be overloaded, and this process is referred to as method overloading. What do you mean by method overloading? Defining two or more methods with same class name and sharing the within the same class and sharing the same name and different parameter list and return type. Then it is called method overloading. Let's see some example. So I just open online editor now. Here I'm creating one class called sample. Sample is the name of the class. Within this class, I'm not declaring any properties. I'm directly writing some methods like int add of int a comma int b. So for this, I'm just adding a body like return. What we have to return? We have to add a plus b. So what we are doing here? I'm just adding a plus b and returning the value. Again, I'm including some other function called add int a comma int b comma int c. That means same add function taking 3 arguments. Let's see how this one works. So return, I'm returning a plus b plus c. Next, in the same program, I want to return sum of two float numbers, a comma float b. Return a plus b. Here, if you observe, the functionality of all these add functions is same, but where you can find the difference in type of parameters. So here we have two parameters of type integer. Here we have three parameters of type integer. Here we have only two parameters but of type float. Let's see how this function, how we can execute this function. So in sample class, we have three methods and three methods are having same name. What is the name of this method? The name of the method is add. So in this main method, Let's create an object for this sample class. Sample space is equal to new sample of. Here in sample, I have not created any constructor. Sample of is a constructor. So here in sample class, I have not created any constructor. What does it mean? If I don't create any constructor, compiler itself create its own constructor and it will it will initialize this object next. So by using this object s dot, here what is the object? Sample is the class and s is the object. So with the object name dot add, I will call the particular functions like 2 comma 3. So I need to print value, so I'm just including it in println. System dot println. I'm just printing the value without storing these values. Sum of 2 and 3. Next, in the same way, I will add sum of 4 comma 5 comma 6. I'm taking 3 arguments now. Let's see whether it will execute properly or not. 4 comma 5 comma 6. Next, in the same way, system dot out dot println sum of 1.23 and 6.75 is s dot add of 1.23 comma 6.75. Let's see how this function will execute. Sorry. Let's run the program. Let's see here. Somewhere, okay. So if you observe here, what is the error? No suitable method found for add double double. Int float is not applicable for this. It is loosey conversion. So to overcome this, I just suffix it with f. If I place f, what does it means? I'm just converting this number to floating. So just visualize this. Next, if you observe here, can you able to see this red mark? Anyone please respond? Can you able to see this red mark? Red arrow. So in this particular visualization program, this arrow will indicate which line you are executing the program. So firstly, what we have done in main, we have created one sample. For sample class, I have created one object. So here for sample, I have created one object. So link has been given. Next. System.out.println sum of 2 and 3 colon add 2 comma 3. So for add function, we are sending 2 and 3 to this particular object. So which function matching this given inputs? So this particular function is matching. So your control pointing to this respective function. Next. So some return value is 5. So summation have been performed and the value is returned to main. So again we came back to main and the value will be printed on console. Next, coming to the next line. Now again reading this next line, we have a function call. Again, based on this function call, we will go and check sample class. How we can go and check the sample class? Based on the object. So here with which object we have called? We have called with S object. This S object is an instance of sample class. So in sample class, we are going to check add function with 3 parameters and that too of type integer. So next 4, 5, 6. So which function we are pointing to now? A function which having 3 values A, B, C. So again return value, that means after summing 4, 5, 6, you will get return value and that return value will be sent back to the main program. And after sending the value, what we will do? We will print the value on the console. So the value will be printed in the console. Next. Again, we have called the function with 2 floating values, that is 1.23 and 6.75. Next. So it will again go and map with the function to which it is matching. That is to which function it is matching? It is matching to this particular function. So when I call with 1.23 and 6.75, this respective function will be called and return value will be calculated, like A plus B calculation will be performed and this value will be returned to the main function. So after returning the value, my main program closed. So at this point we have stopped the procedure. Any doubts ma in this? So for the same program, I will include one constructor. Then you will understand how the constructor will work. What is a constructor? Constructor name should be same as class name, and you can have any number of parameters. It's up to you. So inside this constructor, I'm simply typing as system.out.println. I'm just printing it as inside constructor. I'm inside constructor. So same thing I'm printing. Visualize. So I'm not showing you step by step, ma. So next, now here I have created a object. For that object, we have created the memory. Now, previously it is not pointing to any constructor because we have not created constructor. So your compiler has created its own constructor. Now we have constructor. What we are doing, we are just outputting. We are inside the constructor. Next. Can you able to see this? Without calling the constructor, we can able to invoke constructor whenever we have created an object. Understood? Understood or not, ma'am? So again, ma'am, you may ask me, sorry. You may ask me that, ma'am, constructor is also a method. So can I overload constructor? Yes, you can overload constructor. So again in constructor, we have three types of constructor. So how many constructors we can declare? We can have three different types of constructors. First one is default constructor. Default constructor does not have any parameters. What is default constructor? Default constructor does not have parameter list. Next one is parameterized constructor. What is parameterized constructor? If the constructor having arguments, then we call that constructor as parameterized. Next one is copy constructor. So what is this copy constructor means? For this constructor, we are going to send another object as argument. Same class, other object as argument. If you are sending object as argument, then that constructor is called as copy constructor. And parameterized constructor means the constructor will have some set of parameters. Next, default constructor. Default constructor is a constructor which does not have any arguments list. Okay. For suppose in your program you want to write parameterized constructor, then you have to create default constructor, then only you can able to write parameterized constructor. So మీరు default constructor must amma if you want to write any parameterized constructor or copy constructor. In order to write parameterized constructor or copy constructor, you have to write default constructor. What is default constructor? Default constructor is a constructor which does not have any arguments list. So as I already shown you, in this program, we have written default constructor. If you don't create any default constructor, then your Java program does not gives any argument. For suppose I want to write parameterized constructor. For suppose I want to write parameterized constructor. Then what your compiler will do? Let's see. So here, what type of constructor I have written? I have written parameterized constructor. I think in this compiler it is automatically creating, but generally I will show the same program by installing software in my system, and then you will understand the difference between why your I mean in some machines without writing default constructor you can't able to write parameterized or copy constructor. I think you have understand what is parameterized. In parameterized constructor you will have arguments list. Again, you can have any number of parameterized constructors by varying number of arguments, type of arguments, sequence of data type base. I mean, how you will overload your method, you can overload construct parameterized constructor in the same way, and your program must have, I mean, if you are writing default constructor, your program should have only one default constructor, and you can have any number of parameterized constructor. What is copy constructor? Copy constructor is going to copy an object of the same class to the other class. For suppose, I'm just creating another object. I'm taking it as S1 equal to new sample of S. What I'm doing here, I'm just creating copy of S for S1. So we can able to copy S1 object to S2. So here in our program, we have not written any property. So I can't show you all the functionalities, but I will simply explain. So here, what is the type of the constructor we are sending? I mean, what is the type of argument we are sending? It is of type sample. So sample of S. So system dot out dot println inside copy constructor. Where I'm inside copy constructor. So I'm just so after running all the arguments, can you able to see here we have first we have called parameterized constructor. So parameterized constructor is invoked. Next, here what we are doing, we are copying some other object to some other object. That means I'm copying S object to S1. So we have called copy constructor, and I have not given any body inside the copy constructor. I just print I'm inside a copy constructor. So copy constructor is invoked. Did you observe the difference? For parameterized constructor, it has, I mean, how it will differentiate the constructors. Here also it will differentiate constructors based on arguments. Whatever arguments that you have sent, your constructor will differentiate one type to other type based on arguments. Next, we have performed summation. Now I'm asking you again, did you understand what is the difference between constructor and method, and how to overload method and how to overload constructor? How many constructors we have? C9. How many constructors we have in Java? Yes, 4. You will talk only when I am taking attendance. Now, all these concepts are very, very important. If you don't focus here, you're left with nothing. I will show you the syllabus. If you see here, can you able to see how vast this subject is? So we are till now we have talked about basics of Java and data types, variables, operators, control structures, loopings, Java methods, overloading, math class, and basics of objects and classes and constructors. So in next class, I'm going to cover rest of these things. Okay, first unit is very, very much important in order to understand all the other concepts. Did you understand whatever code that I have explained to you? Okay, moving on to the next topic. Next, type conversion and casting. What do you mean by type conversion and type casting? So as you already studied in C, what is type conversion and type casting? So if you want to perform some operation which is of another type, I mean, I want to perform summation of two values. One value is integer type and the second value is of float type. But I want to return the value in float. So how can I return the value in float? Or for suppose, I have a calculation where I have to divide two numbers, but I want the result in floating value. How can I bring the result in floating value? I have given two integer values, but I want the result in floating value. How can I make it, bring these two integers? If I divide two integers, what will be the output? The output type is also of integer type. If I divide two integers, what will be the type? The return type will be integer type itself. But what I want a type as float, the return type as float. How can I get that return type as float? If you want this to happen, you have to either convert the first, numerator or denominator to floating type. How can I convert it? Before this number, if you write the data type within parenthesis, what does it mean? You are going to typecast integer value to floating value. If you are going to convert smaller value to greater data type, then no information will be lost. For suppose, if you want to convert float type to int type, then some information will be lost. What happens? If you want to convert higher data to lower data, some information will be lost. But if you want to convert lower to higher, Nothing will be lost, but you can upgrade the value to the next level data type. Next, we will talk about this auto conversion in next class, ma. Till now, do you have any doubts?
No, ma'am.
Okay. For this, you are talking. So, quickly respond to your attendance. C7.
Present, ma'am.
8 ma'am.
9.
C9 present, ma'am.
C7 absent.
C7 present, ma'am.
Okay.
C9 present.
8 ma'am.
Okay, D not. D not. D1. D not. D1. D2.
D1 present, madam.
Okay. D2. D2. D3.
Present, madam.
4. D4. D5. D6.
Yes, ma'am.
D7.
Present, ma'am.
D8.
Yes, ma'am.
D9. E naught. E1.
Present.
E2.
Present, ma'am.
E3. E4.
Present,
E5.
ma'am.
E6. E7.
E6 present, ma'am.
Okay.
E7
E7.
present, ma'am.
E8. E9.
Present, ma'am.
F naught.
F not present, ma'am.
F1.
Present, madam.
F2. F3.
Present, ma'am.
F4.
Present, ma'am.
F5.
Present, ma'am.
F6. F7.
Present, ma'am.
F7. F8. F9.
Yes, ma'am.
G naught.
Present, ma'am.
G1.
Present, ma'am.
G2.
Present, ma'am.
G3. G4. G5.
Present, ma'am. G3
G6.
present, ma'am.
G7.
Yes, ma'am.
G8. G9.
G9 present,
H
ma'am.
naught. H naught.
Present, ma'am.
Okay, ma'am. Sir,
Okay, ma'am. Join, ma'am. Join.
okay, sir.
I will continue the class.
Okay, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, students. Good afternoon, all of you. Hello.